welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going a bit beyond just tidying up.
Yeah, definitely past the usual organizing tips.
Our mission is to explore how adopting a fiercely minimalist mindset can actually be a game-changing financial and psychological strategy. We're looking at sources that argue minimalism doesn't just clear clutter, it generates wealth, and, maybe even more importantly, gives you that mental space, the headspace to pursue your passions.
Okay, let's dig into that. Because what's really fascinating here is how the source material just fundamentally challenges the usual definition of success.
Right.
The author's whole point hinges on this idea that traditional affluence, the big salary, climbing the corporate ladder, well, it can actually be a kind of cage.
Yeah, a gilded cage,
Yeah,
maybe?
exactly. You can have all the material advantages and still be, frankly, miserable, stressed out with zero free time. So this deep dive really pushes us to see money purely as a tool.
A tool to build the life you actually want.
Yes, rather than just accumulating capital being the end goal itself.
Right. And the author's own story is, wow, it's the perfect, almost extreme case study for this. They walked away from a pretty cushy New York City corporate job.
High salary and everything.
Totally. Chose a nomadic life instead and spent 9 months traveling across, 20-plus countries?
Yeah.
5 continents?
Yeah, it was extensive.
And the real shocker, the budget. They did it all on just $8,500.
Wait, not $8,500 a month?
No. $8,500 for the entire 9 months. Okay, that figure. $8,500 for 9 months of global travel.
Yeah.
It just forces you to ask how. I mean, that's incredibly lean. Incredibly lean. And it obviously wasn't about luxury resorts.
No, definitely not. It was hyper-efficient living. The author is clear this is only possible through, let's say, extreme measures. Budget airlines were key.
Hostels, not hotels.
Right, hostels, cooking a lot of their own meals, relying heavily on local transport. That whole experience, you can see how it fundamentally rewired their thinking about money and life.
It really did. And the core insight they took away from it all was that their happiness, their fulfillment, was actually higher on that super tight, hyper-conscious budget.
And back in NYC.
And back in NYC with a comfortable 6-figure salary. They realized, when they had less physical stuff, less financial weight dragging them down, they actually ended up with more.
More time, more freedom.
More mental clarity, yeah.
It really drives home that point, doesn't it? That our time and our attention are maybe the most valuable currencies we have.
Absolutely. So let's dive into tip 1 from the sources. This feels like the critical starting point. Extract value from your purchases. Okay.
And this isn't just like finding the cheapest price. It's about a total shift in how you think about buying anything.
Yeah, it requires some radical self-honesty, I think. The big challenge right at the start is figuring out that line between what's truly necessary.
Versus what's just, extra. Stuff you buy because of feelings or what other people are doing.
Right. For most of us, it's just way too easy to buy things on autopilot. Convenience, boredom. Oh, totally. The source gives those examples that are just painfully relatable.
Yeah.
Like buying takeout because you're bored, not actually starving.
Or grabbing some new fast fashion piece because it's trendy, even though your closet's already bursting.
Yeah. But when your budget is as tight as the author's travel fund was, that autopilot just gets switched off instantly.
Yeah. Every single dollar has to pull its weight. It has to be justified.
So how do you do that practically?
Well, this forces you to use certain mental frameworks. Things you can scale down for everyday life, even if you're not on an $8,500 budget. One really powerful idea the author used was calculating cost per use.
Cost per use. Okay, explain that.
So if you buy, say, a $10 fancy coffee every single morning on your way to work.
Which adds up fast.
It adds up incredibly fast. And the cost per use is high because that value, that enjoyment, it's fleeting. It's gone in minutes.
Okay.
But if you spend maybe $500 on a really high quality pair of shoes that you'll wear, say, 3 times a week for 5 years,
right,
your cost per use drops down to just pennies eventually. It forces you to prioritize things that last, things with real utility over that quick hit of gratification.
I love that reframing.
Yeah.
It turns spending into more an investment calculation, doesn't it? Not just chasing a momentary want.
Exactly. And the key becomes everything you buy should ideally serve multiple purposes. Like if you buy a shirt, it needs to work with almost everything else you already own. Or a charger needs to juice up multiple devices, not just one. It really aligns with that quote the source uses. You can't have everything you want, but you can love everything you have.
Why?
Yeah. That forces you to appreciate what's functional, what you already own and use. And to help with that impulse buying, the source suggests something simple, a 24-hour rule for anything non-essential. Just wait a day.
Yeah. That delay gives you time to actually think, maybe do that cost per use calculation, and often just lets the initial impulse fade away. That's
Yeah.
smart. That calculated approach, thinking about value and use, leads us right into tip 2, learn to let things go. We talk about this a lot with physical decluttering, KonMari method and all that. But the sources really hammer home the huge mental weight reduction you get from simply owning less stuff.
Oh, absolutely. The burden of ownership, it's a real psychological strain. It's not just about the physical space things take up.
So when the source mentions that famous line, I think it's from Fight Club, right? The things you own end up owning you.
Yeah, that's the one.
They aren't just talking about being in debt, are they?
No, not primarily. They're talking about decision fatigue. They're talking about the cost and mental bandwidth, just the energy it takes to manage, maintain, and worry about your possessions.
That's a much deeper way to look at it. Tell me more about that mental cost.
Well, the author realized this vividly during their travels, even when they were down to just a single carry-on bag.
Which sounds pretty minimal already.
Right. But even then, just keeping track of and constantly protecting those few belongings caused a surprising amount of distress. Every time they left their bag at a hostel, there was that little worry in the back of their mind.
I can imagine.
And things inevitably get lost or broken or misplaced when you're moving around that much. It happens constantly. And each time, it created stress, wasted energy.
Energy that could have been spent, enjoying the experience?
Exactly. Energy diverted away from being present and towards protecting stuff.
It's like we think we're buying convenience or comfort, but we're actually buying worry and responsibility. That hidden mental tax of insuring things, maintaining them, storing them, securing them, cleaning them.
Precisely. So the solution proposed in the source is kind of twofold. First, you have to actively work on reducing the emotional meaning you attach to material possessions.
Okay, easier said than done sometimes.
Oh, for sure. It takes practice. And second, if you do need to buy something, try to make it cheap enough that losing it is, well, affordable.
Affordable meaning.
Meaning, if it disappears or breaks, you can mentally just shrug, replace it if necessary, and move on, rather than spiraling into stress and frustration. It requires conscious, active psychological discipline.
Okay, I see. And the result of letting go like that, both physically getting rid of stuff and emotionally detaching, it's that sense of radical freedom they talk about.
Yes. Less physical weight to carry, obviously, if you're traveling. But the big one is less mental clutter to manage.
And that freed up mind space, that's where the real value is. It lets you live more fully in the present moment.
That's the argument. Without the constant low-level hum of worrying about loss or dealing with maintenance, that mental liberation seems to be the most valuable outcome.
It's like reallocating your cognitive energy.
Yeah, away from protecting possessions and redirecting it toward, productive experience, reflection, connection, whatever matters more to you. And that idea of reallocating resources, mental or financial, feeds directly into tick 3. This is the practical money side. Less expenses means more money. Okay, now on the surface, that sounds incredibly obvious, like water is wet. Obvious.
Right. Less spending equals more savings. Duh.
It is obvious, which means the real deep dive here isn't about understanding that basic truth. It's about understanding the psychological barriers that stop us from actually doing it.
Ah, okay. We just normalize excessive spending.
We totally do. Until we can't even see the leaks in our own budget anymore, they just become part of the background noise of life.
The author gives such a sharp contrast, looking back at their old, high-earning life in New York City.
Yeah.
They could afford to just indulge in instant gratification constantly, dining out all the time, drinks after work, spending hundreds of dollars on fast fashion every single month.
Items worn maybe once or twice.
Exactly. Clothes that barely saw the light of day.
And those purchases, yeah, they provided those little quick and fleeting hits of joy, as the author puts it.
But they added up.
They added up to colossal waste. Waste that, ironically, kept them chained to that high-stress job they didn't even like just to pay for it all. So, to fight that, the advice is basically conduct a ruthless budget audit. A really honest one. Yeah, you have to stare it in the face. You need to identify all those frivolous expenses, the things that are providing minimal actual long-term value.
And the list of usual suspects, the common culprits, it's pretty universal, isn't it? The sources mention things like,
oh, yeah. Those gym memberships we signed up for in January and stopped using by February.
guilty. Streaming services we barely watch because we're always on our phones anyway.
Overpriced specialty coffees that, cost more than a decent lunch sometimes.
Clothes bought on impulse that just hang there with the tag still on. Or maybe the saddest one. Food we buy with good intentions at the grocery store and then end up throwing away because we didn't plan meals or ordered takeout instead.
Mm.
Food waste is a big one.
That's where so much low-hanging fruit for financial freedom is hiding. Just auditing these things. And it's not about cutting necessities, it's about cutting waste.
Right. So if you find, say, 2 unused $15 subscriptions,
And maybe cut back on, like, 3 fancy coffees a week.
that's suddenly what, $150, $200 back in your pocket every month just
Yeah.
by acknowledging reality.
Purely by acknowledging reality and stopping the automatic drain.
Okay, that's the clear, actionable takeaway.
Yeah.
But I do have to push back a little here, challenge the premise, because this all sounds great, maybe even inspiring when you're a single person backpacking the world on $8,500.
Sure.
But what about the majority of people listening? People with standard, pretty immovable responsibilities, mortgages, kids, pets, car payments, student loans. How does this source material, this extreme minimalist model, scale down to, say, a suburban family life? Where does it break down?
That's a really necessary and important question. And you're right, the model does break down if you try to literally replicate the budget. You can't live on $8,500 for 9 months with a family and a mortgage. But the principles behind it, those scale perfectly, I think. You can't just eliminate the mortgage payment, no. But you absolutely can apply that cost per use rule to every major purchase you make for your children.
Instead of just buying the cheapest plastic toy that breaks in a week.
Exactly. Or you can eliminate the cost of health insurance or childcare, but you can eliminate the truly frivolous spending, the unconscious waste that drains your financial buffer and adds stress. So the core distinction still holds. Minimalism, in this sense, is not about being cheap. It's not about depriving yourself or your family of necessities or even real joys. Exactly. It's about consciously reducing excessive and unconscious spending, the stuff you don't even really value when you stop and think about it, so that the money you free up
Can be deliberately redirected.
Yes, redirected towards your actual goals. For the author traveling, the goal was 9 months of freedom. For someone listening, that redirected money might fund a down payment or pay off debt faster or build an emergency fund that lowers the stress of their everyday life.
Even if they keep the high-stress job for now.
Right. It gives them options, breathing room. The goal is always purpose-driven spending.
It really boils down to aligning your wallet with your deepest goals, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You stop paying for the things you don't really care about. The clutter, the forgotten subscriptions, the impulse buys.
So you can actually afford the things you truly value, whether that's travel or more time with family or starting a business or just peace of mind.
Yeah, peace of mind is huge.
So if we bring this all together, connect it back to the ultimate payoff, we get to the central idea of the source material, which is that the greatest measure of wealth isn't really the number of dollars in your bank account.
It's measured differently.
It's measured in the time and the opportunity you create to pursue a life that feels genuinely fulfilling to you. Wealth, from this minimalist-inspired perspective, is really about finding the capacity to live a deeply satisfying life, often with significantly less material spending than you thought possible.
Okay. So the 3 core strategies we talked through. Extracting maximum calculated value from purchases. The cost per use thinking. Consciously learning to let go of both physical stuff and that mental attachment to it.
Reducing the burden of ownership.
And then ruthlessly cutting out the excessive unconscious spending. Those 3 things provide a kind of roadmap.
Yeah, not like a rigid budget spreadsheet maybe, but more like a system for conscious life design.
Ensuring every dollar, and maybe just as importantly, every bit of your mental energy is actually invested in what matters most to you, your highest priorities.
And that alignment, that focus, brings us neatly to our final provocative thought for you to consider. It builds directly on the author's realization about the true cost of owning things.
Okay, leave us with something to chew on. If it's true, or even partly true, that the things you own end up owning you, then you have to ask yourself, what is the single most valuable, truly irreplaceable item you actually possess? Not a material item, presumably.
Probably not. Is your energy, your focus, your money primarily spent protecting that, whether it's your time, your health, your key relationships, your creativity, or is most of your energy constantly being diverted towards protecting, maintaining, and worrying about the material goods that, at the end of the day, can almost always be replaced?
Where is your energy really going?
Yeah, making that fundamental decision, consciously choosing where to direct your resources, that, according to this perspective, is the real key to unlocking freedom.